They picked a human for mating season and expected him to lead the ritual. David Martinez was fixing his motorcycle in the garage when the sky turned purple. He looked up from the engine, grease on his hands, and saw something that made his heart stop. A massive crystalline ship hovered silently above his small desert town. No sound, no wind, just an impossible structure that seemed to bend light around its edges. The ship landed in the field behind his house with the gentleness of a feather touching water. David dropped his wrench and stepped outside, his boots crunching on the dry earth. A doorway opened in the ship's side, revealing a soft blue glow from within. 3 figures emerged, tall and elegant, their skin shimmering like polished silver. They wore flowing robes that seemed to move with their own wind. Their eyes were large and golden, filled with an intelligence that made David feel small. The center figure, clearly female, approached him with measured steps. David Martinez. She spoke without moving her lips, her voice appearing directly in his mind. We are the Velathi. I am Zephira, High Priestess of the Sacred Cycles. David's mouth went dry. How do you know my name? We have been watching your species for many cycles. Every year, we choose one human to participate in our most sacred ritual. This year, the stars have chosen you. Before David could run or protest, a warm golden light surrounded him. His feet left the ground, and he felt himself being pulled gently toward the ship. Inside, the walls pulsed with soft light, and the air smelled like jasmine and rain. What do you want from me? David asked as they guided him through corridors that seemed to shift and change. Our species faces extinction, Zephira explained. Our males have grown weak, unable to complete the mating rituals that ensure our survival. But humans ... Humans possess something we have lost. What's that? Primal strength. Raw emotion. The ability to lead through instinct rather than ceremony. They entered a vast chamber where dozens of Velathi females waited. Each was beautiful in an otherworldly way, their skin patterns unique, their eyes holding centuries of wisdom. They looked at David with a mixture of curiosity and desperation. The bonding season begins at the rise of our twin moons, Zephira continued. Traditionally, our males would compete for the right to lead the ritual, but they have failed for 7 cycles now. Our population dwindles. David felt the weight of their stares. And you think I can succeed where they failed? We believe humans possess the raw passion our species needs, but you must prove worthy through the trials. What? Trials? Zephira gestured to the assembled females. The trial of courage, where you must face our greatest fears. The trial of wisdom, where you must solve the riddles of our ancestors. The trial of strength, where you must demonstrate your worthiness to lead. David's mind raced. He was just a mechanic from Arizona. He fixed bikes and watched TV. He wasn't some cosmic chosen one. But looking at these beings, seeing the hope and desperation in their ancient eyes, he felt something stir within him. What happens if I fail? You return to your world, and we continue our slow march toward extinction. And if I succeed, you become the first human to lead a Velathi bonding season. You help ensure our species survives. David took a deep breath. The rational part of his mind screamed that this was insane. But another part, a deeper part, recognized something in these beings. They weren't conquerors or explorers. They were desperate survivors, clinging to hope. I'll do it, he said finally. The chamber erupted in soft chimes and harmonic tones. Zephira smiled, the first truly warm expression he'd seen from her. Then let the trials begin. The first trial chamber materialized around David like a living nightmare. The walls turned black, and the air grew thick with an oppressive presence. He found himself standing in the center of a circular arena, surrounded by towering stone pillars that reached into darkness. The trial of courage tests not your ability to fight, Zephira's voice echoed from somewhere above. "But your ability to face what terrifies you most." David felt his heart racing as shapes began to emerge from the shadows. They weren't monsters or beasts, but something far worse. Memories given form. His father's disappointed face when he dropped out of college. The moment he'd found his mother crying over unpaid bills. The day his girlfriend had left him, saying he'd never amount to anything. "These aren't real," he whispered to himself. But the figures felt solid, their accusations cutting deep. "You're a failure," his father's shade spoke. "Always have been, always will be. I sacrificed everything for you," his mother's form wailed. "And for what?" "A son who fixes other people's broken things, but can't fix his own life." The shadows pressed closer, and David felt the familiar weight of shame and self-doubt crushing down on him. This was why he'd never married, never had kids, never taken risks. He was afraid of failing, afraid of disappointing people, afraid of being exactly what these phantoms claimed he was. But then he heard something else. A soft chiming sound, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. He looked up and saw the Velathi, females watching from balconies above. Their golden eyes weren't judging him. They were hoping for him. "You know what?" David said, turning to face his father's shade. "Maybe I am a failure by your standards, but I'm here, aren't I? I'm facing something impossible because people need help. That's not failure. That's just being human." The phantom wavered, its form becoming less solid. David faced his mother's shade next. "I'm sorry I couldn't be the son you wanted. But I am. A son you raised. You taught me to help others, to fix what's broken. That's what I'm trying to do now." The shadows began to retreat, but one remained. His ex-girlfriend's form stepped forward, her voice cold. "You'll abandon them too, just like you abandoned me." This one hurt the most because part of him believed it. He had pulled away from relationships, afraid of getting hurt or hurting others. But looking at the Velathi females above, seeing their ancient sadness, he realized something important. "Maybe I will fail them," he said quietly. "Maybe I'll mess this up completely. But I'm going to try anyway, because that's what humans do. We fail, we get back up, and we try again." The final shadow dissolved, and the chamber filled with warm light. David found himself back in the original room, surrounded by the Velathi females. Many had tears in their golden eyes. "Remarkable," Zephira whispered. "You faced your fears not by conquering them, but by accepting them. This is wisdom we had forgotten." A younger Velathi female stepped forward. Her skin had blue-silver patterns, and her eyes held a spark of something David couldn't quite identify. "I am Lirelei. I have watched many trials, but never have I seen." One faced their darkness with such honesty. David felt heat rise in his cheeks. "I just tried to be real about who I am." "That is precisely why you passed," Zephira said. "Our males have been trying to become perfect, to eliminate all weakness. But strength often comes from acknowledging weakness and moving forward anyway." The chamber began to shift again, walls flowing like water to form a new configuration. Ancient symbols appeared on the surfaces, glowing with soft light. "The trial of wisdom awaits," Zephira announced. "But first, you must choose your guide." "Guide?" "One among us who will stand with you through the remaining trials. Choose wisely, for she will be bound to your success or failure." David looked around the chamber at the assembled females. Each was beautiful and clearly intelligent, but his eyes kept returning to Lirelei. There was something about her that reminded him of the best parts of himself, the parts that refused to give up even when everything seemed hopeless. "I choose Lirelei," he said. The young Velathi female stepped forward, her patterns glowing brighter. "I accept the bond," she said formally, but David caught a small smile on her lips. Then let the trial of wisdom begin. The chamber transformed into a vast library that seemed to stretch infinitely upward. Crystalline shelves held glowing orbs instead of books, each one pulsing with contained knowledge. In the center stood a pedestal with 3 riddles carved into its surface in flowing Velathi script. The riddles of the ancestors, Lirale explained, moving to stand beside David. They have remained unsolved for over 2,000 cycles. 3 questions that determine the worthiness of a leader. David studied the symbols, but they meant nothing to him. I can't even read your language. The riddles will speak to you in your mind, Sephira said from above. But beware, each riddle allows only one answer. Answer incorrectly, and the trial ends in failure. The first riddle materialized in David's consciousness. What grows stronger when divided, yet remains? Whole when shared. David frowned, pacing around the pedestal. Liralai walked beside him, her presence somehow calming. Think like a human, she whispered. Your species sees things differently than we do. What grows stronger when divided? ... David muttered. He thought about his life, his experiences. What got stronger when you split it up? Love, he said suddenly. Love grows stronger when divided among many people, but it stays whole when shared. The first symbol on the pedestal flared with golden light. Approving murmurs echoed from the watching Velathi. The second riddle appeared. What is the greatest strength of the weak and the greatest weakness of the strong? This one was harder. David sat on the steps of the pedestal, thinking. Lirale settled beside him, her shoulder touching his. A contact sent a strange warmth through him. Tell me about your people, he said to her. What makes them strong? We are ancient, she replied. We have great knowledge, powerful technology, perfect forms. But we have forgotten how to take risks, how to be imperfect. David nodded slowly. The greatest strength of the weak is that they have nothing to lose, so they take chances. The greatest weakness of the strong is that they have everything to lose, so they become afraid to act. The second symbol blazed with light. Only one remained. The final riddle formed in his mind. What can only be given freely, yet once taken, can never be returned. David stared at the pedestal, his mind racing. This felt like the most important question, the one that would determine everything. Around him, the Velathi females waited in tense silence. Think about why you're here, Lirale whispered. What brought you to this moment? David closed his eyes, remembering his decision to help these beings. It hadn't been about reward or recognition. It had been about trust, he said suddenly. Trust can only be given freely, but once someone betrays that trust, it can never be completely returned. The third symbol exploded with light, and the entire chamber filled with harmonious chimes. The Vele females began to descend from their balconies, their faces glowing with excitement. Incredible, Sephira breathed. Not only did you solve the riddles, but you solved them with human wisdom. Love, courage, and trust. Concepts our males had forgotten in their pursuit of perfection. But David noticed something troubling. Not all the females looked happy. A group near the back watched him with suspicious eyes, their patterns flickering darker colors. What's wrong with them? He asked Lirale. Her expression grew serious. Not all of our people agree with this path. Some believe that choosing a human dishonors our traditions. They are led by Nexera, the former high priestess. As if summoned by her name, a tall Velathi female stepped forward. Her skin was pale silver, almost white, and her eyes held the coldness of deep space. This is madness, she declared. We demean ourselves by allowing an alien to lead our most sacred ritual. Nexera, Sephira warned, the trials have been passed. Fairly, the trials were designed for Velathi males, not for primitive humans, Nexera spat. I challenge his right to continue. David felt the tension in the chamber spike. What does that mean? It means, Lirale said quietly, that you must face the trial of strength. Not against a test, but against Nexera herself. Nexera smiled coldly. If this human truly possesses the strength to lead us, let him prove it in combat. Belathi combat. David's heart sank. He was strong for a human, but these beings were clearly superior physically. What are the rules? There are no rules, Nexera replied. Only victory or defeat. I accept, David said, surprising everyone, including himself. David, no, Lirale protested. She has trained for centuries in combat. You cannot. I can't win through strength, David interrupted. But maybe I don't need to. The chamber began to shift once more, forming an arena. As it did, David whispered to Lirale, trust me. Sometimes the best way to win a fight is not to fight at all. The arena materialized around them, a circular space with smooth walls that rose high into darkness. Nexera stood at the far end, her form shifting as she prepared for combat. Her skin hardened into armor-like plates, and her fingers extended into razor-sharp claws. David realized he was about to face something far beyond human capability. The trial of strength ends when one opponent yields or cannot continue, Zephyra announced reluctantly. May the worthy prevail. Nexera moved first, faster than David's eyes could follow. Her claws whistled through the air where his head had been a split second before. He rolled aside, feeling the wind from her strike, and came up running. You cannot run forever, primitive, Nexera called, her voice echoing off the walls. Face me with honor. David kept moving, circling the arena. His mind raced, looking for anything he could use. The walls were smooth, offering no weapons or handholds. The floor was perfectly even. This was meant to be a test of pure physical capability, but humans had never won through pure physical capability. They won through intelligence, adaptability, and understanding their opponents. Why do you want to stop this so badly? David called out as he dodged another strike. What are you really afraid of? I fear nothing, Nexera snarled, but David caught something in her voice. Yes, you do. You're afraid that if I succeed, it proves your people have been doing something wrong for centuries. Nexera's attack became more vicious, her claws leaving deep gouges in the arena floor. Our ways are perfect. We do not need the help of lesser beings. David continued to evade, but he was tiring. Human endurance had limits, and he was approaching his, but he was learning something important about Nexera with each exchange. Your people are dying, he said, breathing hard. The old ways aren't working. That's why I'm here. Lies, Nexera roared, but her patterns flickered with uncertainty. David stopped running. He stood in the center of the arena, hands at his sides, facing her. If the old ways were working, would you need to kidnap humans? Would your males be failing? Would your population be shrinking? Nexera hesitated, her claws raised but not striking. You're not angry at me, David continued. You're angry at the situation. You're angry that your perfect civilization needs help from someone like me. We are. Nexera's armor began to fade, her claws retracting. You're scared, David said gently. And that's okay. I'm scared too. But maybe that's what you're. People need to remember that it's okay to be scared, to be imperfect, to need help. Nexera's form returned to normal, her pale silver skin now showing swirls of color, emotions she'd kept hidden. We were gods once, she whispered. We traveled between stars, shaped worlds, commanded the forces of creation. How did we become so small? David stepped closer, no longer afraid. You didn't become small. You became isolated. You forgot. That strength comes from connection, not perfection. The arena fell silent, except for the soft chiming of the watching Velathi. Nexra looked around at her people, seeing them as if for the first time in centuries. "I yield," she said quietly. "Not to your strength, but to your wisdom." The arena dissolved, returning them to the original chamber. But something had changed. Where before the Valathi had watched David with curiosity or suspicion, now they looked at him with something approaching reverence. "The trials are complete," Zephyra announced. "David Martinez of Earth has proven his courage, wisdom, and strength. He is worthy to lead the bonding season." But David held up his hand. "Wait. Before we go any further, I need to understand exactly what this bonding ritual involves. I want to help your people, but I need to know what I'm agreeing to." Lirale stepped forward, her patterns glowing with what he was beginning to recognize as affection. "The bonding season is when our people choose mates for reproduction. The ritual leader guides the ceremonies, ensures compatibility, and participates in the creation of the next generation." David felt his face flush. "Participates how?" "You would be expected to bond with multiple females," Zephyra explained. "Your genetic material would be combined with ours to create hybrid offspring. The ritual is sacred, but it is also ... intimate." David looked around the chamber at the assembled females. Some watched him with obvious interest, others with curiosity. All of them were beautiful, intelligent, and clearly hoping he would agree. "And this would save your species?" "Human Valathi hybrids have been prophesied for millennia," Liralai said. "They would combine our longevity and knowledge with your adaptability and emotional strength." "Yes, it could save us." David took a deep breath. This was so far beyond anything he'd ever imagined. But looking at these beings, seeing their hope and desperation, he felt the same stirring he'd experienced when first agreeing to the trials. "Then let's begin the bonding season." The ceremony chamber was unlike anything David had ever seen. The walls were living crystal that pulsed with gentle light, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with energy. Dozens of Valathi females arranged themselves in concentric circles around a central dais where David stood with Lirale and Zephyra. "The bonding season begins at the convergence of our twin moons," Zephyra explained. "The leader must guide each pairing, ensuring compatibility and blessing the unions." David watched as the moons appeared through the crystal dome above, their light bathing the chamber in silver and gold. The Velathe females began to sing, their voices creating harmonies that seemed to resonate in his bones. "But there is more," Lirale said softly. "The leader must also choose his primary bond, the one who will carry the first hybrid child." David's heart raced. This was the moment everything had been leading to. Around him, the assembled females watched with anticipation. Some he recognized from the trials, others were new to him, but all were beautiful and clearly willing. "How? Do I choose?" he asked. "You don't," Zephyra replied. "The choice is made for you." She gestured to the center of the dais, where a small crystal fountain had appeared. Its waters glowed with the same light as the moons above. "The waters of bonding will reveal your true mate," Lirale explained. "Drink, and your body will call to hers." David approached the fountain. The water looked ordinary except for its glow, but he could feel power radiating from it. He cupped his hands, lifted the water to his lips, and drank. The effect was immediate. Every nerve in his body came alive, his senses sharpened, and he felt a pulling sensation, not physical, but something deeper. He turned, scanning the assembled females, and his gaze locked with Lirale's. Her patterns blazed with brilliant light, and she stepped forward as if drawn by the same force pulling at him. "The bonding is chosen," Zephyra announced. "Lirale of the Silver Spiral will bear the first hybrid child." But even as the words were spoken, David noticed something troubling. Other females were glowing too, their patterns responding to his. transformed presence. 3, then 5, then a dozen began to step forward. "What's happening?" David asked. Zephira's eyes widened. "This is unprecedented. The water should call to only one, but you're calling to many. Is that bad?" "It's impossible," Nexera said from the crowd. "Unless ... "Unless what?" "Unless you're not just compatible with our species," Lirelei breathed. "Unless you're the key to our evolution." The chamber filled with excited chatter as more females began to glow. David felt overwhelmed by the sensations flowing through him. Each responding female created a different resonance, a unique connection. "I can't bond with all of them," he protested. "You don't have to," Zephira said, her voice filled with wonder. "But you can guide them to bond with others. Your presence, your essence, it's awakening something in all of us." David began to understand. The ritual wasn't just about him mating with Velothi females. It was about him helping them reconnect with their own emotions, their own ability to form deep bonds. "Show me what to do," he said. What followed was the most beautiful ceremony David had ever witnessed. He moved through the chamber, his transformed senses allowing him to perceive the emotional connections between the Velothi. He guided compatible pairs together, his human intuition helping them recognize bonds they'd been blind to. Some females did choose to bond with him directly, Lirelei first among them, her connection to him now blazing like a star. But others found partners among their own people, relationships that had been waiting centuries to bloom. "You're not just saving our species," Lirelei whispered as they stood together in the center of the chamber, watching the bonding ceremonies around them. "You're teaching us how to save ourselves." David pulled her close, marveling at how right it felt. "I'm just being human. We're good at connections, at bringing people together." "Is that what this is?" she asked, looking up at him with those golden eyes. "A human connection?" "It's more than that," he said. "It's love, real, honest, complicated love." The ceremony continued through the night, with David learning to use his new abilities to help the Velothi form bonds that would last for centuries. By dawn, the chamber was filled with coupled pairs, their combined patterns creating a light show that was visible from space. As the twin moons set and the star that was Velathi's sun rose, Zephira approached David and Lirelei. "The bonding season is complete," she announced. "Our species will survive." David looked around at the happy couples, at the hope in their ancient eyes, and felt something he'd never experienced before, the knowledge that he'd made a real difference in the universe. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now," Lirelei said, her hand resting on her abdomen where the first human Velothi hybrid was already beginning to form, "we build a new future together." David smiled, thinking of his small town on Earth, his garage, his simple life. It all seemed very far away now, but he didn't miss it. He'd found something here he'd never had before. A family, a purpose, a love that spanned the stars. Together, he agreed, and meant it with every fiber of his being. The story of the human who led the Velothi bonding season became legend, told across the galaxy as proof that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from power or perfection, but from the simple willingness to connect with others and help them find their own strength. And in a small corner of the universe, a dying species learned to live again, one human heart at a time.